The subject of today's video at one point was a 5-star recruit and as high as the number 2 player in the country. While he had one of the most iconic moments in recent Ohio State football history that eventually helped them win a national championship, for a while Jack Sawyer was considered a bust and someone who had not lived up to the potential he had. He ended up having an incredible 2024 season. He ended up having an incredible last year and a half of his career at Ohio State though, and now in my opinion is one of the biggest steals in the 2025 rookie class for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In today's video, we're going to continue my Rookie Spotlight series as we're going to talk about the rise of Jack Sawyer. We're going to go through his journey, how he did at Ohio State, and why people think he could be a stud for the Steelers. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Jack Sawyer. Okay, so in order to understand how we got to this point, we first need to go back in time. Jack Sawyer said his first football memory was an 80-yard touchdown pass, which he also believes was his first ever carry, and this happened back when he was in 2nd grade. He said he always had a drive to win, and quote, "It was kind of something I learned growing up. My parents, we played knockout in the front yard, and they would never let me win. I've always just been naturally competitive since I was a little kid, and I guess it's just kind of natural, but I've always had a huge drive to compete, and I want to win and succeed in everything I do." Sawyer said that football had always been a huge part of his life, as his dad was a starter at the Division II school known as Findlay, his mom played basketball, and his grandfather was a low-level pro baseball player. That, alongside with always being around at football, it became a huge part of his life. He said he always loved the Buckeyes growing up, as he lived and breathed Ohio State, and when they got upset by Virginia Tech in 2014, it hit him hard. He was 12 years old, and he remembers the bus ride to school that next Monday, and people were basically handing out a bunch of condolences, saying, "Hey man, I'm sorry for your loss." Eventually, he was bigger than a lot of the other kids and made an impact at Pickerington North High School, and they had known about him since he was in middle school. His coach said, quote, "When I was hired at Pickerington North, he was an 8th grader. The previous coach before me said, hey, we've got this kid who's in junior high, and he's going to be the best player to ever come through Pickerington." They ended up being correct, but before they even took a snap during the 2017 season, which was his freshman year, he had already shown the hype. They ended up placing him against a future D1 tight end who went to Ohio, and Sawyer beat him on the first day and on the first rep and never backed down. As a sophomore, Sawyer ended up leading Pickerington North to a 6-4 record, and in 10 games, he had 6 sacks, 62 tackles, and 15 TFLs. His coach said they had many special kids, but there was something different about Sawyer with his toughness, his work ethic, and his attitude. He said that they find many 4- and 5-star kids who just don't work that hard in the offseason, but Sawyer did. He obviously had a future in football trying to sack quarterbacks, but at one point during his junior season, he had to play quarterback. He said it was fun, and he would do whatever he'd have to do to win. Eventually, his size led him to getting many offers, as Cincinnati was his first football offer, and Stony Brook was his first basketball offer. As I said, he had to fill in at quarterback a little bit too, and in his first game, he completed 6 of 11 passes for 60 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 134 yards and 3 scores as well. He had been recruited as a defensive lineman, but unfortunately he would tear an MCL in his left knee, and this would sort of be a step back. He ended up finishing with 37 tackles, 19 TFLs, and 13.5 sacks. Eventually, he made an interesting decision as he would opt out of his final season of high school football, just like Jaden Blue at Texas did. Granted, these were different reasons, and this is right when everything weird was going on in the world in 2020. He said, quote, "After extensive discussion with my parents and coaches, I've decided to focus on training and prep for my early enrollment at Ohio State." Yeah, I forgot to get to that part. He decided to commit to Ohio State very early on, as he initially bonded with Urban Meyer and defensive line coach Larry Johnson, but things would sort of change. Everyone knew he was a freak in high school, as he earned offers from Michigan and other teams, but everyone was wondering why the Buckeyes weren't offering. It's because Ohio State doesn't typically offer freshmen. A few weeks later, though, him and his dad were invited to Urban Meyer's office, and it would happen. The words came out of Meyer's mouth saying, quote, "We don't usually do this, but in this case we are. You have an offer from the Ohio State University." Offering local freshmen, especially ones in the area, is apparently a major risk to Ohio State because so many of them grew up dreaming to play for the Buckeyes. That creates a big chance that a commitment could happen on the spot, which could turn into a recruiting mistake a couple years down the road, especially if the player does not pan out. He would have a visit to Clemson scheduled, but he took his first Ohio State visit and committed before going there. Outside of Michigan and Penn State, no one else really had a chance. When he committed to Ohio State, he was ranked as the number 3 player in the nation and the number 1 strong side defensive end, and this would happen 2 years before the early signing period in December of 2020. He chose Ohio State over Michigan, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Penn State, and he became Ryan Day's first commit as a head coach back in 2019. Ohio State's had many guys go on to the NFL, and Sawyer was given a ton of hype. At 6'5" and 220 pounds, he believed his advanced football IQ would help him be a unique player for the Buckeyes. According to 24/7 Sports, Sawyer was a 5-star recruit, the number 3 defensive lineman, and the 5th best player in the class of 2021. So, how would he end up doing at Ohio State? Well, let's take a look. There were very high expectations on Jack Sawyer when he arrived at Ohio State, and they may have put too much pressure on him. They are comparing him to the Bosas and the Chase Youngs of the world, and that is the kind of ceiling he would possess, but as I said, there would be some struggle. He would have to knock the rust off after he sat out his senior season, and then with everything going on in the world, he just wasn't able to really put it all together. During his freshman season, Sawyer would end up appearing in 7 games, finishing with a grand total of 3 sacks. He helped them get to the Rose Bowl, where they beat number 11 Utah 48-45, and in total in his first season, Sawyer finished with 13 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. It wasn't a terrible freshman year, but some were kind of disappointed. In 2022, he'd take a marginal step up, as this time he'd play in nearly every matchup, finishing with a total of 24 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and once again, 1 pass deflection. His best stretch came in his last 2 regular season games, as he combined for 2.5 of his 4.5 sacks against both Indiana and Maryland. His sophomore season was also a bit underwhelming, and going into year 3, Jack Sawyer was not really on the NFL radar. But by the end of 2023, he had changed everything. After not recording a sack in any of his first 5 games, he had his breakout moment against Purdue, finishing with 1.5 sacks on the road against the Boilermakers, and then also forcing a fumble on the road against Wisconsin a couple of weeks later. He'd then have both a sack against Minnesota and Michigan, and in their Cotton Bowl game against number 9 Mizzou, Sawyer would really break out. In that game, he had 3 sacks against the Tigers, and while they would lose 14-3, Sawyer proved that he was a force to be reckoned with. He could have declared for the 2024 NFL Draft, but he had unfinished business. He was stuck in a logjam his first year, and he also just didn't adapt well to Jim Knowles' system. His first 2.5 seasons were defined by a lack of production, but finally he had broken out. He ended up finishing with a total of 48 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 pass deflections. He was named a second-team All-Big Ten selection, but he decided to come back. The answer was simple, as he thought he had let the team down because of 3 straight losses to Michigan. Sawyer wanted to come back with a bang, and he was hoping to build off what happened at the end of the 2023 season. He said, quote, "I've known all along what I was capable of. It was frustrating the first few years, and not being able to play up to what I was capable on the field. But once you put that stuff to the side and go out and play like you know how, it's just going to take care of itself." He ended up giving everything to Ohio State in 2024, as he'd have his best season yet. In total, he would finish with 59 tackles, 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 6 pass deflections. His best moment by far, though, came against number 5 Texas in the Cotton Bowl, as in that game, he would force a fumble against his old roommate Quinn Ewers and take it back to the house, punctuating a win for Ohio State. They would now be headed off to the national championship, and they'd end up beating Notre Dame. The Buckeyes won a title for the 2024 college football season, but Sawyer was not all that happy at the end of the day. His promise was to come back and beat Michigan, but somehow, some way, they lost that game 13-10 at home, in what was probably the biggest upset of last year. Sawyer had a really good season though, and ended up going down as a fan favorite for the Buckeyes, especially with having the longest scoop and score in college football playoff history. In 4 years in Columbus, he finished with 113 tackles, 29 TFLs, 23 sacks, and 6 total forced fumbles. He'd obviously declare for the 2025 NFL Draft, and eventually he was selected with the 123rd overall pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I honestly thought that was a little bit low, as I expected him to be a day 2 selection, but again, I'm not a scout, so what do I know? Many were also confused by the Steelers drafting him, as why would they draft an edge rusher when they already had a ton of talent on the defensive line? Well, so far at training camp, the confusion has disappeared, as some are already saying he has future starter potential in his first NFL season, and he's a completely different type of player than what they already have. His best 2 traits are his motor and his ability to stop the run, as at 6'4" and over 260 pounds, he's bulky and an intimidating force on run plays. His technique and quickness with his hands are a huge advantage, and this skill set should translate directly to the NFL this season. Some think he could be a long-term replacement for TJ Watt, and I definitely think he has that sort of potential. He joins an outside linebacker room that already includes Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig, and he's just another pass rushing weapon and potential stud for the Steelers moving forward. The Steelers are known for having a tough defense and tough-minded players, and Sawyer is exactly that. He is also not new to the Steelers, as while he grew up in Ohio, he's no stranger thanks to his best friend growing up, as that family was diehard Steelers fans, and Sawyer got his share of watching many Pittsburgh games. He said, quote, "Growing up, my best friend's like a brother to me, and they are the biggest Steelers fans you can possibly find in Columbus. So yeah, I grew up watching the Steelers and watching all those teams, and Mike Tomlin never had a losing season, and I'm fired up about that." There's obviously a lot of hype for Jack going into 2025, and we'll see how he does in Pittsburgh, but I think this was an absolute steal, and he had a great story and career with the Buckeyes. But what do you guys think? If you're an Ohio State or a Pittsburgh fan, what do you think of Jack Sawyer? How do you think he will do in the NFL? And which player should I take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen, including my video about to make a buka. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.